How's everybody doing? I feel like that snap into a Slim Jim commercial. Whoa! And like the wrestler and all that kind of stuff. Because that pretty much sums up this episode that you are going to hear. But before I get into that, let me tell you, I am Tim Laskus, and you're listening to The Tim Laskus Show. And this episode, good God, I don't even know what to say. I'm going to have to put the E for explicit on it. It got wild. My guest is Heather Havenwood. And Heather is she is something else. You just wait till you listen to this. You won't believe it. The stuff that we talk about. But before we kind of get into that, let me tell you, she is a serial entrepreneur. She's a top authority on internet marketing and business strategies. In 2006, she started and developed an online marketing publishing company from the ground, from the bottom flow, and built it up to over 1 million in sales. She's coached and promoted hundreds of entrepreneurs. She's produced and managed over 350 seminars and events out there. And she's hosted all kinds of stuff. And she is author of Sexy Boss. And that's just where we got into trouble. I did. It was just getting nuts on the show. Just talking about sex. We were talking about guns. We were talking about cocaine in Miami in the 80s, how it was flying around like people like here, in the springtime here in the South, we start to get the pollen and it's like blowing on your windshield and you got to keep your windows up and running your air conditioning because it'll blow in your car. That's what it was like in Miami in the 80s with the cocaine flying all around. People thought it was pollen. And we just had fun. She's a fellow Generation Xer. She's a go-getter. And she used to go down to Daytona Beach during spring break, during MTV and all that crazy stuff that used to go on down there. We talk about that. We talk about Mardi Gras. And I'm telling you, this has to be an explicit episode. So all you ladies and gentlemen out there, if you got youngins around, don't let them listen to it. Now, it ain't that bad, but you'll know what I'm talking about when you hear it. Heather is something else. She is off the hook. But again, she's author of Sexy Boss, How Female Entrepreneurs Are Beating the Crap Out of the Big Boys. Well, it doesn't quite say that, but something like that. Anyway, get yourself a drink and a comfy chair because you want to hear this one. Enjoy.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests. Entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Welcome. Today's featured guest is Heather Havenwood. Havenwood? Havenwood. How do I say that, Heather?
Havenwood.
Havenwood.
Yeah.
This whole show is probably going down the hill. I screwed up your name from the very beginning.
No, it's okay. Just call me Chief Sexy Boss. We're good.
Cheap Sexy Boss.
Yes, Chief, not cheap now.
Oh.
I
thought you said
Chief. Let's say it again. Yeah, no, Chief Sexy Boss.
Yeah, we have Heather Havenwood here, the Cheap Sexy Boss.
No, very expensive Chief Sexy Boss. How about that?
Hey, you were telling me earlier that you like to work out and line dance, and that you were on that movie Urban Cowboy.
Oh, I wasn't on the movie.
Dancing.
Well, no, I wasn't on the movie, but I'm from Texas and I'm born and raised. But I work out for fun. I work out 5 days a week. And right now in the middle of a contest, I'm going to the Arnold next week for the big Arnold show, the extravaganza. Yeah, it's going to be super exciting. Never been.
When you say Arnold, you mean Schwarzenegger, right?
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger. They have a thing called the Arnold Classic. It's in Ohio every year, and it's like 200,000 people, and it's sports, and it's crazy. And then there's the bodybuilding, and yeah, I'm super excited. I'm going to be there next week. So I'm like dieting down. I'm doing 2 days on cardio and 5 days a week in the gym, and it's kind of fun. That's what I do for fun. I don't make any money at that. So,
well, how many cycles of steroids do you take?
I don't take steroids. Not into that at all.
I just had to ask. I thought the listeners out there might be curious that, I mean, men and women, you're using it, I guess. I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't use it. There are people that do use it.
Uh-huh.
It's not that crazy anymore. I mean, there's a lot of like stigma around it, especially with athletes and whatnot. And if you look at any Olympic athlete at the level that they're at, they're using something to enhance, and it's not like a negative. There's a lot of negative talk to it, but actually, it's not bad unless it's misused. It's like most things, Advil's fine until you misuse it, or something like that. So alcohol having a glass of wine is no big deal until you misuse it. So things like that can be leveraged for the body to help the body heal, but not when you start to abuse it, then that's where things get bad.
Well, it's all about moderation. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got you. Well, anytime I work out, when I get ready to go to the beach, like I'm going to Daytona in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
So I've been dieting down and trying to get ripped. And we were talking about Daytona earlier, back in the day during MTV's and spring break in Daytona. And you said you saw my picture online that I was one of those guys that tried to make out with you back in the day.
No, I mean, I'm like you. I'm a definitely Gen Xer, and I grew up in the 80s and, Atari and MTV. I remember I seriously remember the first day of MTV. I can tell you the first video.
Well, yeah, that was
the radio.
for Bunny.
Okay, there you go. That was it. That was the first video.
What was the name of the band?
Well, I don't know the name of the band, but that's the song. Video killed the radio star. Video killed. Okay, remember? Do you remember that?
Wow.
And then, like, the girl's like just little poltergeisting into the video, into the screen, and she's, you're
That's
like,
right.
what? Yeah.
I thought it was that song, I Want My MTV.
No, it's video killed the radio star. Yeah, that's it.
God, you're good. Do you have a
Okay.
contract, singing contract?
No. Only in the shower. Only in the shower. Yeah. It's interesting as a Gen Xer, because there's so much. Here's my thing about, I'm like a jealous Gen Xer of the millennials. It's like, we didn't get that much attention. People didn't completely change their entire way of doing business for us. We didn't
No.
get that crap. Can I say that? Like, I'm hearing a lot of like, we are totally doing what we do as a company for the millennials. Like, I don't remember that. It was more like when we went to the workforce, it was like, this is how things are. Step up,
Exactly.
figure it out, or this is how things are. There's no like, we're going to cater to you.
And if you weren't like some gray-haired, bald old dude, you didn't get any respect in business.
No, we didn't get, I don't know about you, but if your kids are millennials or not, I don't know. But I'm running into that a lot. And I think it's because the Gen Xers and the Gen Ys, we're the smallest generation. We're like the sandwich, and the baby boomers are the largest, and then the millennials are the second largest. Now they're actually larger than baby boomers because obviously the baby boomers are dying off, whatnot. So millennials are actually the largest generation on the planet in the United States. So it's an interesting dynamic. But I remember I interviewed a millennial earlier this year. And we fought, we debated, we were like fighting on my podcast, mainly because I was sitting there, going, I don't get why you guys are so selfish. And he's like, well, let me explain to you, because we were, not talked to when we were kids. I'm like, what are you talking about? So he had this particular view, and he was a New Yorker, and I had to give him a hard time, and we had a great time. It was a lot of debate. But at the end of the day, what I got from it was, the view of the millennial was that we are different, we are unique, we are different than you older people, and we need special treatment. And I was thinking to myself, wow.
It's like they reversed the script. It used to be the old people discriminating against the young, and now it's the young discriminating against the old.
It is. And I thought to myself, I'm in the wrong generation. I should be born then.
Yeah, and you just depressed me because you said we're dying out.
Well, I'm not a baby boomer. You're not a baby. Baby boomers are dying out, But they're.
Heather, this is supposed to be an upbeat show. We don't want to talk about dying out.
I'm not. I'm just saying, like, you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're
I do
saying.
have a fun story about MTV. I was going to share it with you. Ready? You ready for the fun story about MTV?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I'm here in Austin, Texas, and a couple years ago, I work out with I no longer do, but I did for like 5 years, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1:00 with a group. It was all guys. It was 5 guys, and they're old. They were older than me, about 10 years. So they're like late 40s, early 50s. And we worked out together as a group. And this was a small group, like 5 of us. And it was one of those things where I'd work out with them every 3 days a week, and I knew their first names. And it wasn't until like 2 years, and I knew they were really, really wealthy because they would show up with these really nice cars, and that's all I knew. But there was this one guy, super awesome guy named Mark. Oh my God, the funniest guy ever. And I knew he was really wealthy, but I didn't like ask what they did. I wasn't like, what do you do? They didn't really ask me either. We just like were friends in the world of working out. And finally I figured it out because he was talking about this, that he's going to Mexico for this big party, and people there could be like Bon Jovi and like all these people from the 80s. He's talking about these headbanger bands and White Snake and crazy stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, we're doing a MTV reunion. And I'm like, what does that have to do with you? He's like, I started MTV.
What?
Yeah, it was him and like 2 other business partners that literally started MTV, and they sold it off, and that's why he's like so loaded. And I thought,
Wow.
how did that happen? And he told me the story. It was an interesting. It was like him and 2 other guys. They were in New York, and it was kind of timing, and everything happened. And their first main contract, I think, was with Van Halen. They were super close with Van Halen. Super close. Like they made Van Halen.
And that was the David Lee Roth
David
Van
Lee
Halen.
Roth. Yeah. The original.
Right.
He would tell me stories on stories about the videos and what they're creating, and Michael Jackson and meeting Michael Jackson, and like how video really made Michael Jackson back in the day. So it was interesting. Yeah. I was like, no kidding. So he was very well off. He had a lot of money, and he sold MTV. That was his big claim to fame. He started.
So now he dropped the mic and said, "See ya. I'm living large now."
I did ask him. This is like 3 years ago. And I said, "What do you think of it now?" He goes, "I hate it. The direction they're going now." I was like, "It's so not what our vision was." But they've had to keep up with what's happening. And so yeah, it's interesting to hear from him because it really was revolutionary, kind of like the iPad. It's like revolutionary to say we're going to create an entire channel that just does music all day with videos, and it's going to make money. How's that work? So it's pretty cool.
I mean, they changed an entire generation, and I don't know about you. I was into Miami Vice back then.
Yeah, totally. Miami. What was that
get enough.
theme song with Miami Vice?
Which the
It's not coming to me.
What is his name?
I don't know.
Phil Collins did it.
Oh yeah, Phil Collins.
There was a bunch of people who did music for the show, but I know Phil Collins, even Glenn Fry had a guest spot on one of the episodes. I've got all the DVDs in my closet right here.
Really wears a white jacket?
What?
They would wear a white or pink jacket.
I know. Well, it was like the white jacket with the pink shirt, with the I don't know, linen pants, no socks, and those slip-on kind of shoes that really didn't even have a rubber sole or anything. It was just like material on the ground.
Who does that? Only Miami Vice.
Those are the good old days. We need to go back to Miami Vice days.
Right.
That was awesome.
Right. Anyway.
But they had a special on cable. We're getting way off topic.
I know we are. We're talking about business. You want to talk about business anytime soon?
We're talking about, this is kind of business related. They talked about how the cocaine business built Miami into what it is today. It built South Beach.
Yeah, it did. Completely.
And that was just amazing. I forgot what they call it, the Cocaine Cowboys.
Cocaine Cowboys.
If anybody's out there, look that up. Cocaine Cowboys.
Yep.
And true life story. I mean, they talked about every other car on the street had a trunk full of cocaine. Yep. They said that cocaine was like flying in the air. Cops would pull people over. You just give them a kilo of cocaine and you're on your way. I mean, it's
true.
Nuts.
It really is true. It really made Miami.
Yeah.
There's a new show out right now, and I think it's on it's Netflix or Amazon. No, Netflix or Amazon. It's one of those being sourced by them. It's called Narcs, and it's about that story. And they start this show. It's a real, it's based on facts. They start it like about a couple or months or so before it went down. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing went down. Like when it was Miami, it was like before the cocaine, and there was this particular scene I thought was funny, because they have the story comes from 2 different perspectives, right? The main guy who's the legend of the cocaine dealership, and then of course a guy who's basically a police, right? And so two different views, of course, in their lives. But he talked about how the biggest drug bust he'd ever had was like running after these like hippies with flip-flops down the beach with like 2 grams of pot. He's like, oh man, look at us, dude. We got 2 grams of pot. Look at that. Let's go have a drink, you know? And a couple months later, he would show like how much it just completely changes. And now it's just, they don't even know what to deal with it. They just were so blown away by everything that happened. So it is a true story.
That is crazy. Yeah, that's insane. Well, speaking of building empires, you're not building a cocaine empire that I know of, but tell the listeners about the empire that you are building.
I am building. So I have a couple things. One, I have a couple websites. One is e2lab.com. It's a supplement company. It's a bioidentical supplement company. Skinnybeam.com is a weight loss company here in Austin. And Havenwood.com is my coaching business, where I really work with high performers, like people that are up to something, people that are most likely ADD, up to things, creating things. How do I manage everything? How do I do everything that I want to do? And high performers, that's where I work with them. And then I have a dating business where I teach men how to date women. So I have a couple things going on in line, and that's what I do every day.
Wow, you got a lot going on. How do you manage that schedule of yours?
It's, one of my clients right now, I'm working with them on managing what they have going on. And as they grow, the intuitive thing to do is to take things off your plate. But the counterintuitive thing to do when you're a high performer is to add things on your plate versus take them off. And so it's learning to manage and expand yourself through adding things on your plate. Right. So that's very counterintuitive, because in society, if I come to you as a friend and go, I'm stressed out, oh my God, you're like, oh, you should probably take some things off your plate, And I say, no. You add, expand yourself, learn to really go at another level in life. And how do you really get to a point where you're managing such an empire and still having a life? Right, which is very counterintuitive, and it's also something that I feel in society it's not being taught. Being taught is about being lazy and quick riches and doing nothing and stuff like that, which is not exactly the theme that I fall under. And the reason that is, Tim, is that at a point in my life, I went through massive bankruptcy and foreclosure. I was completely wiped out. Had no credit card, didn't have any money to have a bank account. So I didn't have a bank account for years, didn't have a credit card for almost 8 years. And I lived on an island and I did nothing. And I mean, did nothing. The average age was 80. And I got what it meant to retire. I got what it meant to literally retire.
This wasn't Staten Island, was it?
And it was not. It was Marco Island. That is.
Oh, Marco Island. That's down in Texas.
Nope. Florida.
Florida.
Yeah. It's south of Naples.
Oh, okay. Got you. Oh, yeah.
Yep. No worries. It's tiny. It's only 2 miles by a mile. It's not. It's a little speck. So here I'll share with you what I learned.
Okay.
That makes
Go for it.
So, because a lot of people say, wow, you got it so cool. You got to do nothing and you got to retire in a way, even though I was broke, I guess you say retired, but not. And I'm sitting on the island and I really chose to do nothing, if that makes sense. I really chose to do nothing for a year and just be. What is it like to retire? And I was there on the island for a year, and the average age was 80. And the only thing, there was only one Starbucks, one grocery store, and 4 Walgreens.
Wow.
To give you an idea.
That's a wide variety there.
Right? Well, what that means is that they have a lot of drugs going on. Because they're older. The Walgreens are always packed, right? And then of course the Starbucks was as well. And I learned, here's the lesson I learned, okay? So imagine you're on this island, it's gorgeous. And on the right-hand side of the street, it's what I call beachfront condos. And on the left-hand side, it wasn't beachfront, it was just across the street. They could see the ocean, but they weren't on the beach, just across the street. Literally. And they were what I call typical 2-story condos, Florida, Lanai, basic. They were probably about $200,000. The ones across the street in the condos, I'm talking across the street, walk across the street. They were starting at 2.5. Right. So you have 250, 2.5
million.
Yeah. And one guy's in a brown four-door Lexus and one guy's in a brown four-door Oldsmobile. Okay. And they're living in the same island and they're both hanging out at the Starbucks together. And I realized there was two kinds of people in life when you're retired. They're either A, in the category of what I call retired from the government. You know, that guy who's been there for 25, 30 years. They go, you're done. Here's your stapler and your box. Get out. And then there's the guy or girl, but the guy who was some kind of entrepreneur. They built something, they created something, they were an inventor of something. I don't know, but they had some level of entrepreneurship. The guy that left the government job with this, what they call the red stapler in the box, he or she would deteriorate health fast once it got to the island. Okay. The guy or girl that left their company or sold it off or no longer needed it or whatever it was, right? Left it to the kids. They come there and they're still like alive, right? And they still want to do something. They're the ones like, let's go play golf. Let's go do something, you know? Even though they got their oxygen tank or something like rolling around. Let's go do that, dude. And you're like, you can barely walk. It's okay. Let's do it. You know, they were just like, let's go live. And I realized that the word retirement needs to be literally retired from my vocabulary, because at the end of the day, we all end up in a box. No kidding. Either in the $2.5 million box or the $250,000 box, and then eventually one in the ground. And the guy who's in the 2.5 and the guy who's in the 250, they were buddies. They didn't care. They didn't care that one guy had a Lexus and one did. You know, they don't care at that point. And I realized that no matter what, if you let go of the retirement, like there's a place to get, you're just living. You're just being, you're living, and you're creating. And so that's what I decided to do. And I woke up one day and said, I think I'm done doing this whole thing called whatever, retirement, and I'm ready to live again. And I moved to Austin. And I said, the one thing I could do is I'm not a tree I can move. I can surround myself with other people that are up to something. And that's what I did.
Wow. Well, that's an interesting analysis of that. And the guy who's working in the cubicle for 30 whatever plus years, when he's working towards retirement, then he retires. Well, he leaves, yeah, and he gets his pension and his Social Security check, but he also gives up his identity. And because at that point, I mean, all those years, his identity was wrapped up into his job and his title. Whereas, you know, many of the entrepreneurs, you know, they just continue to do and be, and they never give up that identity, because it, you know, you hear people who build up companies and then they sell, and most times they'll find something else, maybe smaller, to get into. They just don't go and sit on an island and do nothing, to my knowledge. That doesn't seem to be the traditional path.
Yeah, it's you know, it's, and the reason why I bring it up is because I think now this is not so much anymore, but the American dream was sold a lot. So, like if you go to MLM conference, what they're doing is constantly selling the dream, and they're showing pictures of you probably on Marco Island doing nothing. Look at you, you're doing nothing, making money or whatever. Don't you want to be like this? Don't you want to retire? And they're constantly selling you that dream. At least in our society, in our generation, that's what they've been doing. You know, build up, make money with your company, and then retire, then retire, then retire. And I'm like, if you took that out of your vocabulary, what would you be doing? You'd be building, you'd be creating, you'd be experimenting, you'd be inventing. So why not start that now? You know, and that's what I started to do. And versus going for a company, giving away my 30 years of life or 25 years, and then going, oh, now I'm retired, you know? And I think there's a psychology around that that's not positive at all, you know?
Right. I agree totally. Now, in your experience in marketing and being a woman in business,
Yes.
what kind of hurdles have you had along the way?
Ton. A lot of, you know, it's the word discriminatory, I guess, is really big right now, but there's been a lot of discriminatory, especially, I mean, just to give you an example, when I was, you know, flat broke, I remember, going to a conference. I'm on an airplane. I'm talking to this guy next to me, like I'm an entrepreneur, and I had a business partner. What happened is I had a business partner. We went from $0 to $1 million in 1 year, did very well. And I was at a conference for a weekend for a marketing conference, an online marketing conference. I came home from that, and the office was in the second part of the home, in my home. And I came home, and all the computers are gone, all the merchant accounts were switched, all the bank accounts were emptied, and he took everything. So it's not that I'm stupid or, not smart. I had a bad business partner is what happened, and I was literally fell into foreclosure within 2 months and bankruptcy filing within 6 or 7 months because he left me with all the debt of the business. So, here I am a year later, I'm on this, random airplane with this random stranger next to me, just kind of having a conversation about, this is what I've been through. This is what I'm going through. And when I'm looking at building. And he did this typical thing. He just kind of patted me on the knee and goes, well, honey, it's okay. You're pretty. Why don't you just go get married?
Ooh.
And see, what men don't understand is that I'm not saying you, but like in general, is that was normal. I would get that all the time. Like, oh, well, you're going to be fine. Just, you're pretty. Go get married and to some rich guy. That was, I had that so many times. People would say, well, just go get married. I'm like, but I want to get married because I want to get married for love or partnership, not because, oh, I'm broke, I should go do that now. You know what I mean?
Correct, right.
So I got that a lot. I still get this day, like, why don't you just get married? Why don't you have kids? And why don't you forget that whole business thing? And so even though our society is changing, it's still very, it pulls for that. It still does, especially in the South.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that guy distinctly. I don't know his name, no idea. Some guy in 4B. But honestly, I'm showing that story to give you an idea of the energy and still the saying out there of that women aren't supposed to be business partners and women aren't supposed to be business owners. They need to support men, or they need to just go get married and support men that way.
Right.
Believe it or not, it's still there. I'm not dissing that. It's fine if you're a mom. I love it. That's great. It's just not for me.
So when you get these messages that you're supposed to be a mom, you're supposed to be the supportive person, not the person in charge, and and you're just supposed to look nice and sit there and be pretty. That must have really fired you up and pissed you off.
It still does. It still does. I still get it. Like, just be quiet, or you're being mean. I'm like, I'm not being mean. I'm being straight. And if I was a man, you wouldn't say that. If you see a man who's being strong in what he's saying, people might not like what he's saying. Look at the current president. Some people don't like what he says, but they don't say things like, you're being mean. Mm-hmm. Stop it. Be nice. They never do that. They might go, I don't like what he's saying. He's a jerk, or whatever, or debate what he's saying, but they won't do that. Don't stop, you're being mean. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's what they do for women. You're being mean. Be nice. You're a girl. Be nice. And if you have a daughter out there, if anyone out there who's listening who's a daughter, the worst thing you can say to your daughter who's 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 going, now, share your toys, be nice. That's the worst thing you can say, because in reality, in entrepreneurship, when you're out there, when you're 19, 20 years old, if you just keep giving away your toys / your money or / the shirt off your back, you got to take care of yourself first. You can't help other people unless you take care of yourself first. So it's like, no, I want to teach them to be, what I call adult selfish. Take care of yourself first. Then you can help others. Right. So it's an interesting dynamic that is taught with women when they're younger. Being bossy when you're a little girl is mean. When you're an adult, being bossy, that just means you're the boss. Right? So, and I don't consider, and that's why I wrote the book Sexy Boss. And my book, Sexy Boss, How the Empowerment of Women's Changing the Rule Book for Money, Success, and Sex, because to me, it's a way of being. What Sexy Boss means to me is a woman who owns their femininity as a woman. They are female, they are a woman, they own that energy, right? They don't have to be mean and masculine and with the word dyke or something like that, okay? But the boss means they're at full ownership of all areas of their life, right? Health, well-being, financial, mental, physical. So it's meaning ownership of your life. And that's what sexy boss means.
Well, do you think you're often misunderstood when people see that title and they say, "Oh, sexy boss," and then they see pictures of you and they're like, "Oh, she's just using
Right.
sex. She's terrible," because that, there. Do you ever kind of get those opinions?
Oh, all the time. Yes, 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 yes. In society, if we saw a 007, right? 007. We
Yeah.
saw him walk in a room and everyone stared in his dapper way, like, who's he? He's dapper. We call that a charismatic energy, right? In society, we call
Hmm.
that charismatic. We call that confident. And if the book Think and Grow Rich, chapter 7, sex transmutation is actually the transmutation of sexual energy in a human being. And it's the one thing that is the differentiator between us and animals, that we have the ability to like hone our sexual energy, right? And we call that in men confident. In men, we call that charismatic, right? We call that very attractive. And men and women, it's called a B, right? ITCH. If
Mm-hmm.
she walks in the room and she's confident, what you get from the male is like, she's hot, let me do her. Or the woman's like, who do you think she is? The women are very conniving and backstabbing, right? So in the world of just owning who you are as a woman, being a woman, and owning who you are and all responsibility of your life actually really is the sex transmutation in women. Oprah, she's dynamic. She walks in a room, bam, we all know who she is. And if we didn't know who she was, you'd still get her energy as like being a sexy boss, right? That's a woman who owns herself as a woman
Mm-hmm.
as a boss. Her energy is very, sex transmutation has been transformed into charismatic energy. So yeah, there's actually there's a science behind it. And so I'm just naming it something. It's called sexy boss. Being confident. Have you seen women in your life that are like confident? They just walk in the room and you're like, damn, girl, like you got it going on. Just like they own who they are and they're sassy. And it's interesting in the African American community, calling a woman powerful woman is very almost like a compliment, or a sexy boss or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. It's a very compliment.
Mm-hmm.
But in the others, like for me, I'm white. So in the Caucasian, it's not so much. It's almost like, oh, don't be like that. Don't be so cocky. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's also not only the different societies, but also culturally,
Right.
right? And also, of course, I'm the South.
Yep. Regional.
If I was a New York Jew, it'd be different. I'm allowed to be louder,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like this. It's really interesting. But for me, I'm a white Southern Baptist background, so I should be sweet, loving, quiet,
Mm-hmm.
subdued, and not carry a gun. But I'm not. I'm none of that, and I carry a gun. So it's an interesting dynamic of society that teaches you what you're supposed to be based on demographic, culture, where you grew up, stuff like that.
That's an interesting take. But I thought you did carry a gun in your boot.
I do. Not my purse, but yes.
Gotta have that concealed weapon. Do you need a concealed weapons permit in Texas?
You don't have to, but you can.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. We also have concealed and unconcealed, so you can actually carry an unconcealed weapon.
Gotcha. Wow.
Yes.
Well, you gotta be careful who you mess with in Texas.
That's
You
right.
might get the barrel right in your face. So,
Yes.
well, you
But that was a
explained
long
that.
answer. Sorry about the long answer, but I just want to make sure I explained it and that there was a scientific proof behind
Yeah,
it. And
I think that's good that you did, because I think a lot of people are going to look at the title and go, "Oh, what does she mean by sexy boss?" And
Right.
but it gets people's attention, then you're able to really explain what it means, and why you use that title, and it's totally different than what most people may think, about you or about the book. S-
Absolutely.
So, since you've been on this entrepreneurial journey for a while, what are some tips you would have for entrepreneurs out there, or entrepreneurs who were kind of in the trenches themselves? Anything you've learned along the way that's been helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few what I call life lessons. These life lessons were given to me at the bottom of my barrel. No kidding. I was broke, and a dear friend and mentor, Richard Flint, gave these to me. And these are life lessons that I've literally lived by, and they're time-tested principles of life that I've literally lived by ever since. And so I'm looking to my right here because they're literally on my desk, and I look at them every day. So one of them is never stay where my presence is not valued. Never stay where your presence is not valued. This goes in many directions. This could be in a relationship, a significant relationship. This could be at your job. This could be at a group, an organization that you're involved in that you've been giving, or trying to fit in, and you just really get that your presence there is not valued. That was a big one for me, because I realized that I was trying to have relationships with people, or with men in relationship, literally, and I got that who I wasn't valued, and you can't make someone value you. You can't sell them into that. And once you realize that, you're like, oh, I'm just not valued here, and you move on.
Yeah, I think people put way too much effort into, trying to be valued by others, and,
Yeah.
and forcing that. And when you don't need to, you need to cut bait and go pretty much. But I think what you're talking about also is that intuitive kind of part of us to know that this is not right. This is not a good fit. It's time to go. So there's no definitive time that, okay, you've been there 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years. It's just when you feel it intuitively, then it's time to go. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, absolutely. Or day one, or first day, or 6 years later, you can like look around and go, am I valued here? Versus liked. It's a hard one to say. Do they like me? I mean, who knows, right? But when you say, am I valued? Am I valued? When people value you and respect you. They might not like you or disagree with you, but there's a very big difference of like, I'm respected here. I'm valued here as an employee or in a relationship, significant other. Intuitively, and that answer. The other one that kind of goes along with that, the other life lesson is never keep anyone in my life that's not part of my fan club. That's another big one. Now, remember at this time, this is right when I was dead broke, and I was really confused, and I was kind of what I call reaching out to family members and people that hadn't supported me in the past, but I was desperate. I was in that desperate space, and I was just reaching for anything. And he said that to me. He goes, you need to be aware who really is in your fan club and who's not. I'm like, how do you know? How do you really know? And he said, well, this is what you do. Imagine you're in New Orleans. Just imagine you're on Bourbon Street having a good time, and everyone is there. Cousins, friends, parents, significant other, they're all there. And they're either in one or two places. They're either on the, what they call, on the porch above you, right? That are just supporting you, and they're being your ravaged fan, going, yeah, we love you, we support you, you're amazing, like we support you, and they're cheering you on. You're like, or they're in the gutters and they're grabbing at your heels. And think of every person, and you don't place them there. They'll place themselves there. You just kind of like visualize them, and they'll kind of place themselves there. And what's sometimes surprising, it was to me, like someone that's really close to you, all of a sudden you see, oh my God, they're in the gutter. They're the ones like nipping at my heels, not really supporting my dreams, what I want. What is that? And you start to realize that they're just not part of your fan club. And realizing that's part of, could hurt. It could be a little sting. But at the same time, you have to realize it's not about you. That's just where they're at. But realize who really is part of your fan club.
Mm-hmm.
And listen to them, and not listen to the people that are grabbing at your heels. It could be your mom. It could be your dad. Unfortunately, it could be the people closest to you who really aren't supporting you in what you want,
Yeah, and that's so important, is to have that close knit, those fans, or whoever they are, whether they're family, friends, clients, or just people that you meet in social media who are there, really cheering you on and building you up and not tearing you down. You talked about those who are in the gutter pulling you down, and we do enough of that to ourselves, so we need to really have those people around us, cheering us up. But yeah, I liked how you used kind of the whole analogy of being on Bourbon Street, because I think Mardi Gras is going on right about now, right?
It is right
And
now. Yeah.
and
There
on
you
Bourbon Street, I was thinking, because I've been there during Mardi Gras, the people up in the balconies, they're cheering you on to show something, is what they're
go.
cheering you on
Mhm.
right now. So
They are usually flashing you. Yes, I didn't go there, but yeah, yeah. I mean, it really is. the balconies, are they cheering you on? Are they like that? Are they screaming like, you're amazing, Tim, we love you, whatever you want to do is great, or are they like, you shouldn't do that,
Hmm.
it's stupid, why are you doing this, stupid, and you'll hear it, and so then all of a sudden you'll realize, I mean, for me, I've realized it was my father. This is the person I
Hmm.
adored and just adored him, who he was for me as a kid. And I realized he was somebody that actually was bringing me down every chance he got.
Hmm.
And that was hard for me to take and look at
Hmm.
that, really.
Well, and it's hard to cut those people off who have been close to us for so
Yeah.
long.
And as an entrepreneur, it's key. It's a really key piece. If you don't surround yourself, or at least listen to the people, or differentiate between the people who are your fan club versus who are nipping your heels, you're going to suffer, because you're going to be constantly looking for either permission or, am I doing this right? And if you listen to the wrong people, right, it'll steer you in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well, I love those tips about, valued and paying attention to, who's value, who does value and who doesn't, and who's part of your fan club. With you being part of kind of in the trenches of marketing, you understand it very well. Are there any strategies in 2017 that have to do with marketing that can benefit entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things that are like the hot things of 2017. One is podcasting, what we're doing now. I think it's still the cutting edge. I think it's very important that every business owner, solo entrepreneur, solo whatever, knows how to share their story. And sharing their story is not sharing their resume, right? So I think everyone needs to learn how to share their story, and podcasting is a great way to do that, because I'm not staring at 1,000 people's eyes. When people freak out at public speaking, I'm staring at my computer screen, or whatever. And so there's that fear factor taken away of the public speaking piece. But it does help people learn how to share their story. I've been on over 200 podcasts myself. And so from that process, I've learned to share stories and tell stories, but also share who I am as a story, versus, let me tell you my name and this is my credentials and this is my, I mean, that's boring,
Hmm.
right? If you want to know that, just go to my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to print it out, read it. So I think that that's a key one. The second one is live. Video live. I'm doing a lot of that right now. I'm actually shifting over my podcast to audio and video and doing back and forth. So video live and getting really used to getting in front of the camera is a key piece for 2017 for all solo and big, large business
Well, for
owners.
sure. And podcasting, I think right now it's a land grab for podcasting. I think
Yeah.
it's still a new frontier that people are starting to get into, and I think it's going to continue to grow over the years and just be such a powerful force
Yeah.
for people who are podcasters and for people who are guests, that both of them are going to benefit greatly.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean, when my podcast is on iHeartRadio, and people say that there's an automatic, oh, iHeartRadio, radio, but in our iTunes, and nowadays the cars, you can click a button and it say iTunes, and
Yep.
boom, boom, boom. You never listen to radio anymore, so you bypass a lot of that. So yeah, there's a huge power in that, and I think the next level of that is live. Once we have Uber, once Google and Uber figure out how to do self-driving cars,
Oh
and we
yeah,
can watch videos while we're
absolutely.
in the car.
Well, and they say the self-driving cars are safer than people driving them. They're not distracted because they're not looking at their phone, they're not texting, they're not calling, they're driving.
I don't know. I have a hard time with it. I get that it's coming. It's one of those, like, I get that it's coming, but wow, I don't know. I have a hard time because there's just things that happen. Like, I walk out just today. I walk out in my neighborhood, and I have two dogs. I have to really watch. And I stepped out on accident. And there was a car. It stopped, and I can't imagine if that would be a self-driving car if they
Oh
could see
yeah.
that.
They would have
You know
stopped sooner because of that sonar or that radar or that whatever sensors they have. They would pick up on it and they said, "Oh, you need to stop." And so you wouldn't see the front of that car kind of go down because the brakes were hit so hard. They would see it way before they got to you.
Well, I'm glad they're not doing the testing of the self-driving cars in Austin. That's all I gotta say. I think they're doing it in Pennsylvania now or somewhere.
Yeah, they think Pennsylvania's probably a safer spot. Probably not as
Yeah,
much
than
traffic
Austin.
on the road and
It is not. Yeah, Austin's. Austin's crazy right now with traffic. So
Well, that's a pretty popular place to live. Lots of things going on,
it
lots of
is.
nightlife.
It
And
is. And here's why I say to anybody who's thinking about moving here, don't. Please go to Dallas, Houston. I've
don't
heard
go to
they're lovely.
Austin. It sucks in Austin. It's
It sucks.
terrible.
It's horrible. I'm just kidding. I have a
Stay
t-shirt that
away.
says, I heard Dallas is nice. Move there.
Go to
And
Dallas.
please keep going north. Don't
There you
stop.
go.
Just go north about
There's
4
your tip
more.
of the day.
Yeah, there's
Go to Dallas.
go to
Right. We
Dallas.
could have a whole podcast on Texas
Yes.
and where to go and where not to go and where the best place to carry your gun.
Yes. And
All that
South
good
by
stuff.
Southwest is going to be here in 2 weeks, which is super fun. I don't know if you've been
Oh,
to that.
yeah.
But South by Southwest literally takes down the city on multiple. It's been almost 2 weeks.
Wow.
It's
Well, yeah, that should be fun for you. Just stay at home.
No,
Or
I'm
get
gonna
or
go.
leave.
I'm going.
Or-
I mean,
oh, okay.
I live right. I live near downtown, so it engulfs you. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to go. But
We have to join the party.
yeah, you gotta join the party.
Well, speaking of joining the party, when did you first realize you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Were you in diapers? Or it was
No.
later on?
No, it was an interesting story actually. I was in corporate America. I've been there for 4 years. I was actually number one in the country in sales rep. When they hired me, I was B2B sales, so that's outside sales. And it was kind of like a bet. The guy who hired me, I was like 22. I didn't have a degree yet, and I told him I wanted to be outside sales, and he laughed at me. And he's like, sure. And he was like, whatever. If you don't make the quota in 3 months, you're fired. But don't worry, honey. We'll put you in customer service or something like that. And I said, well, I'm not going to be fired. So I was there for 4 years. And in that world, that's a long time. Like I was senior.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the only female in the office as a sales rep. Everyone around me was men, their 40s, because it was senior level position, believe it or not. So I'm 25. I'm making like $100,000 a year. I'm going to school at night. So I'm working my way through college at the same time. And I'm number one in sales in the entire country. And then I get my, what I call pat on the head, the corporate pat on the head, like, congratulations.
Oh,
And then they fired me after I got my little like pat on the head. And there was a couple things going on. There's a couple things going on looking back, right? It was politics. I wasn't very good at like sucking up to the boss because I was just doing my job. And there was a lot of jealousy, right? Because I was number one in the country, not just out of the office. Like I was beating people in New York and Chicago and LA and like that. And I was in Fort Worth. So I was considered in a small area and I was territory wise and I was beating everybody. So they fired me and gave all my counts to my male assistant. Right. So it was a male woman thing, which is super weird. So I didn't know what to do. It threw me. Like it really threw me because I thought you work for a big company, you make them a lot of money, they give you a little bit of that, and then you're happy. That's what you do.
mm-hmm.
And so when I got fired, I was just like, okay. And all my friends were like, well, just go get another job. And I'm like, that's the one thing I know I don't want to do. I just knew I didn't want to do that. Now, I didn't know what else to do, but I just knew like I didn't want to build my book of business and then have it just be pulled from me again. That's all I knew. And so I'm sitting there for about 6 months, not sure what to do. And I see this infomercial. And the infomercial went something along the lines of, do you want to control your life? Do you want to make more money? And I was like, yes, that works. So I go to this little, hotel room the next day at 1:00 and there's people in the room and they're selling me into a $3,000, like how to buy and sell houses
A
or something.
hotel room. That sounds kind of creepy, Heather.
No, no, this is like 1999, 2000.
Oh, okay,
No, this is
all right.
what you did
Yeah, you could do that
before
in
the internet.
1999.
So I went to the hotel room and got in front. We call that a VSL now, where you sit in front of your computer and watch an hour-and-a-half presentation. Back in the day, you had to actually drive and get in a car and park and go to a hotel room. So I did that. It was an hour-and-a-half presentation, and they said it was a $3,000 event, and I couldn't do that. I didn't have that money. And all of a sudden, they said the magic words, and they said, but for your spouse is only 1,000. So I nudged the stranger next to me, John, Bob, Joe, whatever his name was. And I said, can I be your spouse?
Wow.
He said, sure. So we go to the back of the room And I give him my credit card with my different last name and my different address and my different everything. And I'm like, I'm his spouse. And they're like, yeah, right. But they still took my money. And they were very happy to take my money. And yeah, so that's what happened. And what ended up happening is the company that was running the event, they tapped me and they're like, we want you to work for us. So I started actually traveling the country, teaching people how to start a business in real estate investing and being an entrepreneur. And then, of course, I started my own business doing that. And then on we go. Here we are, years later.
That's an interesting story, Heather. I mean, going to a hotel room, marrying a guy you don't know. Did he ever take you on the honeymoon?
No, I never saw him again. In fact, he paid the $3,000 to go to the event the next weekend, and he never showed up. They're like, your spouse, Joe John's not here. I'm like, he's sleeping?
He
He's
dumped
sick?
you.
I don't know.
Heather, he just dumped
did.
you. I mean, that was quick.
That was quick.
Wow.
But I was happy I didn't pay $3,000. All you paid.
You didn't care.
That's all I cared.
As long as you didn't pay
I
the
didn't care.
$3,000.
I was not interested in the date. I was interested in just,
Well,
getting away.
that's an interesting story. And so it sounds like you understood, how to make things work financially and being able to take advantage of that. But when you were growing up, did you always have a good sense of money and how to budget? I know you went through your own, bankruptcy, but, growing up early on, what kind of messages did you receive about money and finance?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very valid question. And it's something that I'm just now in my life re-looking at newly about my relationship to money. No, I didn't. My parents, my father, so I hear, so the story goes, my father was extremely wealthy in the oil business and a very successful real estate investor. But that was early in my life. And then my parents got divorced around when I was 6, 7. But somehow no one got any money out of the divorce. All the lawyers got all the money out of the divorce. So we ended up broke and having to go through foreclosure and losing the house. And my dad took what he had left and started a new family in Florida. But supposedly what I hear, we were extremely wealthy. But after the divorce and 3-year jury divorce trial, the lawyers are really wealthy now. So however that worked. So no, I grew up with a single mom at that point, and she didn't have a job and she had a hard time keeping a job. She was in and out of jobs. So we struggled. I mean, we really struggled. It was me, my mom, my sister, and we struggled. I mean, my whole life around money. So when I told my mom when I was 25, I'm going to go become an entrepreneur, she freaked out, flipped out actually.
It was probably very foreign for her.
Yeah, she freaked out and she called me one day and said, honey, I found a job for you in Arkansas. It's an assistant for $8 an hour and they have benefits too. It's in Hope, Arkansas. And I was just like, mother, seriously. But I mean, I know that she's just trying to, make sure I was taken care of and had a roof over my head. And I understand that. But it was a lot of fear around money and a lot of scarcity around money in my growing up.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've had to rewire myself around money, and I'm still continually that all the time. I think that's one thing that as an entrepreneur you always have to do is continually rewire yourself to the next level. And if you want to make 100,000, okay, that's one level. If you want to start making 600,000 a year, that's another rewire. You want to start making $1 million a year, you got to rewire again and continually rewire your brain to the possibility of that.
Right. And you're going to need that strong foundation in the beginning. So even before you make any money, it's good to examine what are your beliefs about money and spending and how to make it and what's important and what's not to spend it on.
Right.
So that you get that good solid foundation and to look to those. Don't look to family and friends to tell you, to
No.
give you tips about money.
No. But I was a saver. I mean, I had my first financial advisor when I was 17 and 18. Then I started working for them. And then they wanted me to become a financial advisor when I was like 22. I was like, are you crazy? I'm not going to ask you. That's crazy. But I learned then how do I say this? The dirtiness of that business, that I learned quickly that they really didn't care about people's money. They were just they were salesmen. They were just selling the mutual funds and they didn't really know what was in them. I saw people they take almost off the street or right out of college who didn't know anything about crap about financials, and they would give them the phone book and just dial for dollars.
Yeah.
And they knew nothing about finances and stocks and I mean, they knew nothing. They knew nothing. And they just sold. And I saw them do that. And I thought, wow, that's weird. That's not what I thought.
Shady business. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a shady business. So that's when I really started to look at my financial views of saving and put into mutual funds. And what does that look like? And is that the best thing? So now to me, it's like I put it in business. I'd rather put my money into businesses, building businesses, multiple streams of income, different kinds of businesses. I'd rather do that than mutual funds,
Yeah. Well, it
For
sounds
me.
like you've been to a number of schools of hard knocks when it comes to
Yes.
money and
Many
and
hours.
having to deal with stress that's related to that. So how do you cope mentally with stress, whether it's about money or anything else in your business? What's been helpful for you to mentally just process everything?
I have a coach. I mean, I do meditation. I work out.
Mhm.
There's a lot that your body and your health and well being is completely important when you're an entrepreneur, because if you're not the high level of your body is your temple, and if you're not at the highest level in your health and well being, you can't be at your highest self in your awareness, and your focus is completely connected. You don't see someone who's completely unhealthy, completely overweight, who is laser focused and has a high energy. You just don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I think that's, I think something that's really interesting about our current president, like him or not, I'm staying away from all that. But I would say something that's really interesting to me about him as a human being is that he doesn't drink alcohol. And he's never done drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really interesting on a health and well-being. And the guy doesn't sleep. Or the guy's just nuts. He's constantly working, and
Sure.
he's got a very high energy. Again, staying away from like him or not, but he's got extremely high energy. And that's because his training as an entrepreneur, it's like that. He knows he's only as good as how he can be. So I think that's, for me, that's said the same way. I also have a coach. I've always had a coach for the last almost 10 years of my life. I've always had someone in my ear pushing me beyond what I think is possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's very key as well. Can't do it on your own. Anyone who tells you they've done it on your own is full of it.
Yeah. Well, and they're keeping an eye on you, and they're, after they've been with you for a while, I'm sure your coach knows Heather very, very well. And when they see you start to get sidetracked, either mentally or physically, they're gonna draw you back in and say, "Hey, we need to do this."
Yeah, but all the highest performers in the world have Oprah has a coach. Tony Robbins has a coach. Coaches. He's got coaches. So I think it's important. And when I hear some people that are egotistical, and they talk about they've done it on their own and they want to be mentors for others, but they don't take on a coach themselves, I would say run from that person.
Yeah.
Because even the most highest coaches I know, highest performance people that I know, they have coaches. They have someone.
And you mentioned Tony Robbins having a coach. He is seen by many as the coach of all coaches. And so if the coach of all coaches has a coach, there's
Absolutely.
something to be said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So during your journey through all of this, you've talked about a number of issues and mishaps and kind of roadblocks and speed bumps and all those things. But what's been the most fulfilling moment of your kind of entrepreneurial journey?
I think my most fulfilling moment at this time has been, in a weird way, the worst time, if that makes sense. So it's overcoming the financial ruin that I went through, like coming from the ashes, as they call it, the phoenix from the ashes. And my book, Sexy Boss was a huge pinnacle part of my life, or turning point in my life, because it was me sharing my story of what I went through, and very vulnerable. It's my story. It's my personal story. So I think that's something I'm very proud of, because I can honestly tell you that while I was going through it, if you had told me in a couple of years you're going to write a book about it, I probably would have told you to F off or something like that. I was like, hell no, I ain't going to say anything to anybody, So me sharing that story is like very vulnerable for me. But also because I had a particular view that I'm smart. I'm smarter than you. And if that can never happen to me, it would never happen to me. I'm smarter than that. Yeah, I'm smarter than you. Very egotistical. So, of course, God has a way to bring you to your knees and humble you. And that humbled me to a point of like, wow, how do you build your house? Do you build it on rocks? You bring sand, or you build it on good soil? So you have to really start from scratch. So my book was me starting from scratch and sharing my story about that.
Well, I like the title Sexy Boss by Heather Havenwood better than F Off by Heather Havenwood.
Yeah, that would not be good. I don't think anybody would buy that. F off. Get my book. F off at Amazon.com. Yeah, no one would buy that.
That's great. Well, Heather, this has been a fantastic interview. You have been just a blast to talk to, a lot of fun. I mean, you brought the energy and you brought some wonderful, wonderful information for the listeners. And before we leave, I would like to throw it back to you so you can tell the listeners where they can find you, your website, and where you're at on social media and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. You can check me out at Havenwood.com. And if you're interested in working with me, interested in saying, hey, you know what, I want to take my life to another level. I'm looking for people that are high performers, that are already up to big things, and they really want to take it to another level in their marketing and business. Reach out to me. Love to have a conversation with you. The other piece of that is I'd like to give you 3 free chapters of my audiobook, Sexy Boss. And you can do it 2 ways. You can either text the word sexy to 72,000, text the word sexy to 72,000, or they can go to sexybossinc.com and opt in.
That is excellent. And for the first 3 people that go to our website, you're going to win a night out to do some country line dancing with Heather.
Yes, absolutely. Come on down to Texas. If you're South by Southwest, you let me know.
Come on down. That's fun. Well, Heather, it's been great. Thank you again. And I hope to keep in touch and to follow you on your journey as you continue through this wonderful experience that you have going.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim, for having me.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlaskos.com.